If you've ever found yourself standing alone in a dim kitchen, clutching a mug of cold coffee while your husband texted, "I'm busy," you'll understand what it means to feel your heart shatter into 1,000 pieces, so small, you can't even begin to pick them up. I'm telling you this not to make you pity me, but because I want you to know how a woman like me, fading quietly in a loveless marriage, ended up falling for a man who burst into my life like a storm and loved me so completely, I forgot I was ever numb. That night, I dressed up for our 3rd anniversary dinner. The dress was white, the heels high, the lipstick bold. I wanted to feel beautiful, even if I had to do it alone. My husband, Ethan, sent a last-minute message saying he had an urgent client meeting. I went to the restaurant anyway, holding on to the tiniest thread of hope. 2 hours passed. He never came. And that's when I met him. Lucas Knight, CEO of Knight Corp. The man the press called a ruthless billionaire with a smile sharp enough to cut steel. But when I first saw him, he wasn't surrounded by bodyguards or cameras. He was just a tall, commanding figure walking into the restaurant, shaking the rain off his coat. The moment our eyes met, something shifted. I didn't know why he was looking at me. Maybe it was the lonely wine glass in front of me, still untouched. Maybe it was the way I kept glancing at the door, hoping. Or maybe he saw something in me that I had forgotten existed, a woman who once dared to dream. The waiter brought the check. I fumbled for my purse, only to remember it was locked in the car. My cheeks burned with embarrassment. And then, his voice. "She's with me." 3 words. Spoken calmly, confidently. And just like that, my humiliation vanished. I turned to him, speechless. He didn't even look at me. He simply nodded at the server and sat down across from me. The room hushed. Moments later, Ethan arrived, rushed, distracted, still on his phone. He barely acknowledged me. Lucas looked at him, then at me. "Do you know him?" he asked. "My husband," I said quietly. Lucas's eyes hardened. He leaned back, just slightly, and said the words that turned my world upside down. "If he won't treasure you, I will." Ethan scoffed. "And who the hell are you?" Lucas smiled, slow and dangerous. "The man who just bought your time." Silence. Tension. A crack in the air you could almost touch. Ethan stammered, tried to protest, but I had already risen from the table. I was done begging for crumbs. Lucas followed, opened an umbrella, and held it out to me. "Let me take you home." His voice was warm, steady, so different from the icy distance I had gotten used to. I don't know why I didn't say no. Maybe it was the way he looked at me, not like I was broken, but like I was still whole. In his car, the leather smelled of something expensive and safe. Neither of us spoke for a while. The rain tapped softly against the windows. Then he broke the silence. "The worst part isn't the cold," he said. "It's being invisible." And just like that, I started crying. Not because I was sad. But because someone finally saw me. When the car stopped in front of my house, he didn't ask for anything. He handed me a small, cream-colored card. His name. His number. "If you ever want to feel seen again," he said, "call me." Then he drove off. No pressure. No promises. I stood there in the rain, holding that card like it was a lifeline. Behind me, the house was dark. No Ethan. No warmth. Just silence. I looked down at the card in my hand, and for the first time in a long while, I felt something new. Hope. To be continued. The next morning, I stared at that cream-colored card for a full 10 minutes before slipping it into the pocket of my coat. I told myself I wouldn't call. I wasn't that kind of woman. I was married, wasn't I? I had made vows, and no matter how hollow they'd become, I still wore the ring. But the truth? That ring had started to feel more like a shackle. Ethan barely came home that week. Meetings. Deadlines. Out-of-town clients. Every excuse sounded like another nail hammered into the coffin of our marriage. On the third night, I decided to surprise him at the office with dinner. A silly gesture, I know now. I should have known better. The receptionist gave me a strange look when I walked in, carrying the takeout bag like it was some grand peace offering. She told me Ethan was on the 22nd floor, in a meeting with Night Corp executives. I stepped into the elevator, and for a moment, I hesitated. 22 was the same number printed on the corner of Lucas Knight's business card. My heart raced. The doors opened with a chime. I walked down the hallway, heels clicking against marble tile. I saw the glass-walled conference room before I saw him. Lucas. Seated at the head of the table, exuding authority like it was stitched into his skin. His eyes met mine through the glass, and he stood, like he'd been waiting. And then, Ethan turned. His expression shifted from confusion to alarm. I don't remember who opened the door first. Maybe it was Lucas. Maybe I did. All I know is that when I stepped into that room, silence swept through the space like a curtain falling on a stage. "Emily," Ethan said, voice laced with irritation. "What are you doing here?" I held up the bag. "You forgot dinner." He didn't even look at it. "You could have just left it with reception." That was when Lucas walked over, slow and deliberate, and took the bag from my hands. "She came all the way here. At least have the decency to thank her." Ethan's jaw clenched. "This is my wife. Stay out of it." Lucas tilted his head, like he was studying something beneath the surface. "Then treat her like it." That was the moment. The exact second everything cracked. Not because Lucas defended me, but because Ethan didn't. He didn't pull me aside. He didn't hold my hand. He didn't say a single word that sounded anything like love. Later that evening, I sat on a park bench with a hot coffee in my hands and a million thoughts in my head. That's where Lucas found me. No driver. No entourage. Just him. He sat beside me without asking. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded, though I wasn't. "I've seen women like you before," he said after a long pause. "Strong. Quiet. Always giving more than they get." I stayed silent. "But here's the thing," he continued. "Strength doesn't mean staying. Sometimes, it means walking away." I turned to him. "And what? Into the arms of another man?" He smiled softly. "Not just any man. One who would burn down the world if it meant seeing you smile." It sounded ridiculous. Over the top. Dramatic. But in that moment, with the wind blowing hair into my face and his gaze steady on mine, it didn't feel ridiculous at all. It felt like possibility. He drove me home again that night. This time, I didn't say no. I didn't flinch when his fingers brushed mine while opening the car door. And when we reached my driveway, he didn't hand me his card. He handed me a question. "Do you really want to go back in there?" I looked at the dark windows. The quiet house. The silence that waited for me like a punishment. "No," I whispered. Lucas leaned in, close enough that I could feel the heat of his breath. "Then don't." My chest tightened. "I don't have anywhere else to go." He didn't respond. He just opened his passenger door again. And I got in. That night, I didn't sleep in my marital bed. I slept in a guest suite high above the city, wrapped in Egyptian cotton and silence. Not the cold kind, but the comforting kind. The kind that meant peace. Lucas didn't touch me. He didn't even come into the room after showing me where it was. But there was a glass of warm milk waiting on the nightstand. And a handwritten note, "You deserve more than the bare minimum. Sleep well." I cried reading it. Not because it was romantic. But because no one had ever thought of me like that before. Not even Ethan. Especially not Ethan. The next morning, I woke up feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Safe. I know what you're thinking. That I was vulnerable. That I was being reckless. That Lucas Knight was a billionaire used to getting what he wanted, and I was just another project. But it wasn't like that. He didn't try to seduce me. He didn't promise me yachts or penthouses or diamond necklaces. He promised me something rarer. Respect. Every time we met after that, it was me who reached out. A text. A call. A question. And every time, he responded. Steady. Patient. Present. He never asked me to leave Ethan. But he never pretended I should stay, either. Sometimes, he said one night over dinner, love isn't loud. It's not fireworks or grand gestures. It's someone knowing your coffee order, noticing your silence, and showing up anyway. That night, he walked me to his balcony overlooking the city skyline and said, "You've spent years being someone's option. What would it feel like to be someone's choice?" I didn't answer. Because I was already feeling it. I didn't go back home for 3 days. I told myself I was just staying at a friend's. That I needed space. That Ethan wouldn't even notice my absence. And I was right, he didn't call, didn't text, not even a single message asking where I was. Lucas never questioned it. He gave me his guest room, left me breakfast on the table each morning, perfectly toasted bread, soft scrambled eggs, and exactly 1 sugar cube in the coffee. He remembered. Everything. Even the way I took my tea when I was sick. He didn't ask for anything in return. He just existed near me, like warmth in a room I didn't know had turned cold. But on the 4th day, I cracked. I found myself sitting on the edge of Lucas's kitchen counter, staring at a picture of Ethan and me on my phone. A vacation photo from years ago, his arm around my shoulder, my smile soft and hopeful. I barely recognized us. Lucas walked in mid-thought. He paused when he saw the look on my face but didn't say a word. He simply leaned against the counter across from me and waited. "I used to believe he loved me," I said, voice trembling. Even when it stopped feeling like it, I held on. Because I thought maybe marriage is supposed to be hard. Lucas's eyes darkened. "Marriage isn't supposed to feel like punishment, Emily." I looked up at him. "So what is it supposed to feel like?" He crossed the space between us and cupped my face gently, reverently, like I was something fragile but sacred. "It's supposed to feel like home. Like you're safe. Like you never have to shrink to be loved." His words unraveled something inside me. A knot I hadn't known was tangled. I felt my breath hitch, my hands tremble. But instead of pulling away, I leaned into the certainty of his touch, into the space he created where I didn't have to apologize for existing. And then he kissed me. It wasn't desperate. It wasn't rushed. It was slow and aching, like he was trying to memorize the exact shape of my heartbreak with his lips. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel guilty. I felt alive. I returned home the next morning. The silence was waiting for me again, like it had never left. Ethan was in the study, on another call, his tie loosened, eyes on his laptop. When he saw me, he barely flinched. "You've been gone," he said simply. I nodded. I needed air. He didn't ask where I'd been. Didn't ask who I'd been with. He just went back to typing. And in that moment, I realized something cruel but freeing. He didn't love me. Maybe he never had. He loved convenience. He loved control. He loved having someone who'd show up with dinner at his office and stay quiet in meetings and keep the house running while he built his empire. But love? No. That was never part of the deal. So I walked into our bedroom, packed a single suitcase, and left the ring on the nightstand. He didn't even follow me out the door. Lucas didn't ask for details when I showed up at his penthouse that night. He just opened the door, took one look at the suitcase in my hand, and stepped aside. "I'm not here for a fling," I said. "Good," he replied. "Because I don't do temporary." That night, he made dinner. Himself. burnt the pasta, ruined the sauce, and somehow managed to set off the smoke alarm twice. We laughed like teenagers in a kitchen that smelled like disaster and fresh basil. And when we finally sat down with takeout instead, he raised a glass of wine and said, "To new beginnings. And to women brave enough to burn the past down." I toasted with him. And this time, I didn't cry. It wasn't all easy. The first few weeks felt like walking barefoot across shattered glass. I second-guessed everything. I flinched at kind words. I waited for the mask to slip. But Lucas. He stayed consistent. Gentle. Unshakably loyal. He never told me what to do, never made me feel small. Instead, he taught me how to breathe again. How to laugh with my whole chest. How to trust that love didn't always come with bruises or silence. He introduced me to his world, not as a trophy, but as a partner. Board meetings. Charities. Gala nights. Every time someone whispered who is she, he'd answer without hesitation. She's mine. Not like possession. Like pride. Like reverence. Months passed. My divorce was finalized. The headlines were brutal. CEO's wife leaves quietly, reappears on Night Corp's arm. They called me a gold digger. A traitor. A rebound. But I didn't care. Because when Lucas looked at me, he didn't see a scandal. He saw a woman who had survived the cold and chose fire. And every time he pulled me close, pressed a kiss to my forehead, or whispered "You're safe now," I believed him. Because in a world that told me I was too much, too emotional, too needy, he made me feel like I was exactly enough. Like I was finally, irrevocably, loved. It happened on a Tuesday. The kind of Tuesday that feels like a lull in the chaos, no drama, no press, no business emergencies. Just me, Lucas, and the quiet hum of the espresso machine in his kitchen. He was wearing a plain white shirt, sleeves rolled up, a little flower on his wrist from a baking attempt he swore would impress me. Spoiler, it didn't. The croissants looked like pan-fried dumplings. But I didn't care. Because there was something warm in his laughter that morning. Something that made me forget the cold marble floors of my past. And then his phone rang. He glanced at it once, frowned, then walked into the study to answer. I didn't listen. I never eavesdropped on his calls. He never gave me a reason to doubt. Until I heard the glass break. I ran to the study and found him standing motionless, his hands still clenched around the edge of the desk, a shattered tumbler on the floor. His jaw was tight, knuckles white, eyes darker than I'd ever seen them. What happened? I asked, heart suddenly racing. He didn't answer. For a long time, he didn't even look at me. Then finally, in a voice lower than I'd ever heard. They're trying to destroy everything. What do you mean? My father's company. Night Corp. The board is voting to remove me. They say I've lost focus. That I'm compromised. My stomach twisted. Because of me? He didn't answer. But the silence said enough. I swallowed hard. Then let me fix it. He shook his head. This isn't your battle, Emily. I stepped closer. You're wrong. You came into my life and fought for me when I didn't even know I was worth it. Let me fight for you now. He finally looked at me, and in his eyes, I didn't see fear. I saw restraint. Pain. Love. They'll tear you apart, he said. I've already been torn apart, I whispered. But this time, I won't let it break me. Or us. The meeting was held in a skyscraper downtown. A room full of men in suits and women in silk blouses who thought power came from how loud you spoke or how hard you could crush someone's name. Lucas entered first. Stoic. Controlled. I followed 5 minutes later. In heels that echoed like thunder across polished marble. In a dress as black as ink, with my hair pinned up like armor. And every eye in the room turned to me like I was a problem they couldn't solve. Ms. Bennett, One board member said flatly, "This is a closed session." "Then open it," I replied. "Or you'll miss the truth." They didn't know what to do with me. But they let me speak. And I did. I spoke about loyalty. About character. About how Lucas Knight was the kind of man who gave without needing credit, who built empires not with greed but with vision. I spoke about the man who saved not just a company, but a woman who had been drowning in silence. And then I looked them straight in the eye and said, "You think loving me makes him weaker? It doesn't. It makes him human. And if this board punishes a man for having a heart, then maybe it's not the leader who's compromised, but the structure that's already broken." The room fell still. One by one, the board members looked away. Someone coughed. Someone else scribbled notes. No one said anything for a full minute. But I knew. I knew we'd shifted something. And when Lucas reached for my hand under the table, when his fingers threaded through mine and squeezed, I knew we'd already won. They didn't fire him. In fact, a week later, they promoted him, officially naming him sole CEO, removing the last remnants of his father's old guard. We celebrated with champagne on the rooftop of his building, the skyline glittering like we'd stolen the stars. And just as I was laughing, genuinely, deeply, the kind of laugh that comes from knowing you've survived hell and made it out whole, he turned to me with that soft smile. The one he only wore when no one else was around. He dropped to one knee. No ring. No big speech. Just a question. "Emily Bennett," he said, voice thick with emotion, "I don't want a love that fades. I want a war we both survive. I want every fight, every kiss, every tomorrow, with you. Will you marry me?" I didn't cry. I smiled. Stepped forward. Pulled him up by the collar. And kissed him like every part of my past was finally done burning. "Yes," I whispered against his lips. 1,000 times, yes. I used to believe that love was something soft and silent. Now I know. Love is a wildfire that burns everything that no longer serves you. Love is the man who sees your ruins and still calls it home. Love is choosing each other, again and again, even when the world says you shouldn't. And when Lucas Knight holds me now, arms wrapped tight, lips against my forehead, I no longer wonder if I'm enough. I know I am. Because I'm not just loved. I'm cherished. Forever.